Welcome back to Insight Club. Today we're talking about assumptions we make around planning and setting goals. Stay tuned. The first rule of Insight Club is you don't talk about Insight Club. You do Insight Club. The second rule of Insight Club is the only assumptions we make about one another are that we all want happiness and we all want to avoid suffering. The third rule of Insight Club is you check all your other assumptions at the door. We hope these conversations will bring you insights that incite you to action. Welcome to Insight Club.
And you ask yourself, where is my mind? Where is my mind? Where is my mind? Welcome back to Insight Club.
So what struck me this time in our intro is you don't talk about Insight Club. You do Insight Club, but we probably have to do both, right? I mean, one of the ways I get to more clarity is just talking with somebody wise, with an open heart. And like, why am I doing this thing? What's going on there? Here's something that happened to me and let me unpack it. So just noticing like, oh yeah, maybe there does need to be some talking involved, but there also needs to be action for it to be moving us and helping us spiral up, as we were talking about.
Actually, putting the things that are in our mind and in our heart out should be actually the first part of planning.
Yeah.
And since we're talking about assumptions around planning and setting goals, I think this is one thing that it's so easy for us to get to a planner where there's this structure and where you put your goals and so on and feel like, where do I start? I don't know what to put in here. And you just said, like, you don't have to start by filling in blanks. It's actually just brainstorming, heartstorming everything that is alive.
Yeah. Free flowing. For the last few years, I have really felt the pressure of like December 31st, January 1st to be days where I did that kind of planning. And I had a cool experience this past year where in September of last year, I just got this surge of energy, went out, bought myself a 2025 wall calendar and started mapping onto it the dates of when I want to be teaching my class. Like I want to do 3 rounds of influential storyteller in 2025. And I just put the dates out. And it was a really like kind of fascinating thing to observe because that's not generally how I relate to planning. Generally, I feel a lot of pressure, a lot of anxiety, a lot of, as you were saying, the need to just get in there and map out the steps like into action. Okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And it's been this really cool anchor. It's the only thing so far that's on that calendar. But it just feels really good. I feel very held and very loved and very safe knowing I've made space for this thing that's really lighting me up and I really want to do. And feeling like a badass. So I was like, wow, if I'd waited until now to do that, I probably would have felt rushed and I would have struggled to get out because it's an 8-week class. And so I would have struggled, I think, to map the dates onto the calendar in a way that felt spacious in terms of, ramping up and inviting people, leaving space between, avoiding, times of the year when it's hard for people to make commitments and meet. So that was like a cool aspect of my planning. I'm like, I'm just going to listen to that when I really felt that energy. And the other thing I did differently this past year was to put 2024 to bed over the course of several different sessions. Like I had some women over on the winter solstice, and we did some reflecting and journaling and, prompts and questions around what am I leaving behind and what do I feel finished with? And that was really spacious as well. Just what are the things I'm letting go of? And then on the last day of the year, I did some more journaling around what are the things I'm proud of in the year. And that was some more. And then I did, because I closed a program, I ended up doing some reflection on what worked for me about it, what didn't work, like what would I have done differently. So I had these different moments where I was doing that deeper reflection, really embodied.
Yeah.
And that felt very nourishing.
Mm.
And you were talking about doing, can you say more about, you said like you think the solstice is a great time to dive into some of this stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm feeling the exact opposite. So I'm like the shadow to what you're experiencing in 2025. I I like to plan at the end of the previous year, the 21 or 20, depending on the year, which is the solstice. For me, feels the most nourishing, or even in equinoxes. One thing that helps me with this is that uh, I get to pick like, oh, the next solstice, the next equinox, all the solstices and equinoxes are points of shift. So I
Yeah.
feel like for me it's easier to plan quarter by quarter than year by year because it's quite a lot. But still, I like to have like a bigger vision for the year, which the solstice feels for me the most. Uh, yeah, the easiest point because it kind of merges the calendar that we have, which is like starting in January, which we talked about. Sometimes it makes no sense because the start would be in March, which is the start of Aries, so it would be like the go 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 time. But when you get to Aries, you actually want to be in go 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 time. If you just start that, you start to rush. So what feels natural is to plan in the Capricorn sign, which is when the solstice happens in December. Then have a time of just contemplation, meditation in Pisces sign, and then start getting to the vision in Aquarius, which is 3 months around that, but it gives you enough time to like have a vision, plan the vision, take some time to rest and reconnect, and then make any adjustments that you need before you go go go.
Yeah.
Actually, I made it opposite. Actually, it's the planning the vision and then the rest. So it's just invert this last Aquarius twice. So it gives enough time to plan, test the plan with some of the visions that will come, and then take some time to rest before you go go go. And what happened this year, and I feel like, maybe it's just me wanting to like assuming that I need to have it because one of the things that
Oh, wait, I'm having trouble hearing you. Your audio is really low for some reason.
wait a second. Is it better now?
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe it's a little bit of my assumptions as well that I needed to know, which is something that came to me in meditation. That I need to, the thing that is blocking me is that I wanting to know everything. And the thing is, right now, there are parts of the plan that don't depend on me.
Yeah.
And then I don't know what to do with these parts. So I was caught with, do I just plan on the things that I can plan? And maybe many people go through this, like there are other people involved. So you can't, and there's no certainties on some of the things. So I get myself questioning, do I plan on the things that I have control over? Even if that means that I might leave behind things that I would like to do, but I can't plan right now? Or do I leave space and don't plan everything right now so that I still can do the things that were in my plans if everything went exactly the way I wanted?
Yeah. I mean, what's the difference in energy between those? Because I can see the answer being different. I mean, I feel like the answer is definitely different depending on how it feels. And there's the feeling of, I mean, it's like the feeling of expansion or the feeling of contraction, like anything, right? So is it, oh, I can't, like, I can't do this without knowing what these people are doing. So I'm just like closing in and I'm great. Or is it the expansive feeling of like, oh, well, they may not be able to, they may not be available for that thing I want to do. So it would feel so nourishing and self-loving if I went, I'm going to just plan to do this thing. It's
Yeah.
right. It's same action, totally different energy.
Yes. And that's basically where I grabbed the planner and I got stuck. And then I thought I'm gonna try to meditate on some stuff, and then I had a lot of rage coming out as well, which was good because I needed a release. So
Yeah.
that helped. And then came to what you just said, like what it would be the most self-loving as well.
Yeah.
And then I see that we talked the last time about the heroine's journey and the cycles and how cycles repeat, but that doesn't mean that we got back to where we were. Sometimes it's just another layer of that, and then we go through it again, but now knowing the path in a different dimension, but still like knowing a little bit of the ins and outs of it. And then I got to understand that part of what's making me feel so stuck is that I am at that bottom of the cycle where I need to do the descent, which I'm doing now, but it's painful.
Yeah.
And I was holding on to, like I was avoiding that part of the undoing, the destruction that needs to happen before, the chaos that needs to happen before new things can birth.
Yeah.
And I was holding on to all these structures that felt safe and that felt like it's what I want to keep growing. And that was keeping me like I can't do anything because I can't go back and I can't go further without doing this burn.
Yeah. Do you mind going into it a little bit? Because I think when we were talking last time, it might have been off air. I think we got more into the heroine's journey after we actually closed the episode. And so for people who aren't familiar, like people probably have some familiarity with the hero's journey. And if you've seen Star Wars, like you know the hero's journey. But like I hadn't, when you shared with me about the heroine's journey, it made immediate intuitive sense, but I had never heard of it. So will you take us through a little bit more what that is and like what you mean by the descent?
Let me just grab a book so that I can explain the whole. So you're all familiar with the hero's journey, right?
And the idea of that is like the hero is called to action, he resists the call, and the mentor is like, no, you're really ready. So that's like Luke meeting up with Obi-Wan Kenobi.
He accepts the mission. He finds a mentor that helps him. He goes into the battle. He finds enemies. He goes into the underground, and there's the fights and all the difficulties until he can like win and go back in the journey back home. Through this journey back home, other thing I can't remember everything that happens, but anyway,
there's like a maturation, right? It's like
yeah.
And then you come back and you share it with your community is like a big part of it.
The hero's journey, it's all about going outside.
Yeah, doing big deeds. It's Telemachus going to like save his father, Odysseus. It's Luke Skywalker. Yeah.
The heroine's journey is about going within, and I'm gonna grab the journal in a moment.
And I think this is like a really cool parallel to talk about when we're talking about assumptions around planning, because even the word planning, which I'd love to unpack more after we talk about the heroine's journey, is like well, what does that mean? Does that mean about doing things out in the world? Does that mean about shifting things in my own internal life? It can mean both. And I think we usually assume planning is about the outward stuff we're going to do. And when we circle back around to planning, I just want to share, like, I'm thinking about my goals, in quotes, for this year in a totally different way
Yeah.
than I have before, and it is all an inward thing.
I feel like the inward work is should be part of what's planned, because we make time in the plan, in our planner, in our calendar, for other people, for clients, for family stuff. But why it's so hard sometimes to make time for ourselves?
Yeah,
And this is the part of the self love and self work, self the feminine part, right?
yeah.
It is that. So
Let,
I have the journey here. You
cool.
would.
I was just gonna say that, like, I'll drop this in here. I've said I'd circle back to it, but I'll just drop it in here. Maybe we'll circle back to it more. I'm thinking about who I want to be this year.
Yeah.
And I'm operating on the hypothesis that as I become more the me I want to be, I will easily and naturally do the things I want to do. So far, my planning this year, other than putting these dates on a calendar I was talking about for when I want to run this class, my thinking, my ideating, my planning, my goal setting this year is around how will I more deeply embody like the energy that I want to have. And I keep imagining it being like slipping into a current, and that setting these goals of like, I want to do this, I want to create this in the world, I want to put this out, I want to do all these things, is like swimming upstream. And then if I just shift into the current, then I can flow on the river. And then I'll be like, oh, I wrote a book. Oh, I did a thing. Oh, like these things will naturally come out. And I don't mean to say I won't have to put effort and attention and focus and discipline into them, but I don't think they'll feel like I'm scrambling and fighting, which is what completing big projects and goals sometimes does feel like to me. And it's why I get caught up in this idea of planning, or it's one of the reasons. There's a lot of baggage for me around planning. And some of it has to do with what you were talking about, like how much control do I have? And, maybe having other people in plans is God's way of reminding you, like, there's never any control, but not knowing what that person is going to do and whether they can be part of your plan is just like a friendly reminder, like, hey, it's all swirling chaos, right?
Yes.
But I'm relating to, like, I'm feeling desires about what I want to do this year as opposed to the pressures of what I should do. And that's all down to this kind of inward journey.
I want to point to something very important that you said. So first of all, that going with the flow that you mentioned, that's the feminine way of doing, which we explored so much already. And I feel that I went a little bit off that with being more around men in the past 2 years. And this is part of why I need to go to the descent right now.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, you said like who I want to be. And so many times I hear, and I'm not saying it's wrong, it's a beautiful way of thinking as well. People say like, who do I need to be to do the things that I want to do?
Yeah.
Right? That's a very outward, like what I need to change to in myself to be able to do the things that I want to do. Now,
It's
if
still
you
a means to an end. Yeah. It's like,
Yeah.
it's still focused on what's the outward thing I'm going to accomplish. And then the inner shift is a means to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, but then when you get to it, do you love the people that you've become or not? That's the thing. Like, when you think, like you said, like, who do I want to be? It feels lighter to think, like, oh, yeah, if I want to be this person, these are the things that I need to adopt. And what will be the end goal of that for me? It might be a little bit unknown, but I know that I'm gonna feel overflowing and fulfilled and
Yeah.
like
The
living my purpose.
it feels like an end in itself. I mean, like, I want to be kinder.
Mm.
I want to have more moments of gratitude and feeling like life is full of miracles than I have, blaming or like being mad at the world. Like, I, those feel like ends in and of themselves. And then I also have just a powerful knowing that it's so tricky. Like, language is so funny this way. So it's definitely not, I want to be a kinder person because then I'll be able to, create the things in the world that will bring me success. It's like, it's definitely not that. It's like, I just want to feel this way. And I know enough about the world to know when I feel that expansive, it will be so easy and obvious for me to create the things from my heart that shine more light.
Yeah.
Like, how much easier will it be to like get my Oracle deck distributed worldwide when I am radiantly glowing with the inner light of love, and God is just sending people out of the woodwork directly knocking on my door going like, hey, we hear you have an Oracle deck. Which happened to me last year. Like, just like the beautiful synchronous miracle, like somebody coming to me. And again, it's not that I want to sit here and not put any effort or any dedication, but how much easier will it be when I am in that flow?
By the way, I pulled a card from your deck just yesterday, and it was "You're held no matter what."
Oh, beautiful. I'm glad that came for you.
That was just perfection.
I'm very happy with it. And on the new moon on the 30th of December, Grady let me do a story spread for him.
Mm.
It was so powerful. And I was like, dang. And the one of the cards that came up was the one that you designed as a prototype for like, what could this deck look like? And so it came up and I was like, Grady, you don't even know. This one has my juju. This one has Lais's juju. Like, this got this one is coming through so hard and so clear to tell you what's available to you. But yeah, so the inner shifting, if that's all that happens, I'll still be happy. And I'm 100% convinced that those inner shifts help me to be more available for like the highest destiny I could hope for.
Yeah, that's the thing. So I want to share the heroine's journey.
Yeah.
And I just grabbed here too, because it has all the steps as the hero's journey, but it starts instead of with the separation of like you're there and then you go on a journey outside. The heroine's journey starts with the separation from the feminine.
From the
It
family.
from the feminine.
Oh.
It's that point where we feel like I need to seek success. I need to get into that masculine world where people need to make money and all of this stuff. Then there's the identification with the masculine and finding allies to get what you want, to create what you want. Then comes the proofs. You find the enemies. There's that in the feminine as well. The things that are going to make things harder for you. The illusion of success. And then after the illusion of success, which is usually when you uh, see that maybe you won, but it's not what you want, or you got whatever it is that you got everything you thought you wanted, and then you get into that awakening of you left behind a very important spiritual part of yourself, and that makes you feel like you're dying, or you uh, killed an important part of you.
Mm.
That's where you get to, like, you need to go to the descent, to the goddess, to the womb, to the underworld, and bring back all the pieces
Mm.
of the feminine that you left behind through seeking success, doing the things, thinking that your only worth comes from what you can do, what you can give, what you can conquer, what you can, and this can feel feminine sometimes because you can feel like, but I'm serving people, I'm helping, and but still we're helping from a place of taking pieces of ourselves instead of serving from a place of overflow.
Mm.
That's what takes us to the descent, and we need to bring those pieces back. We might feel like, I don't know who I am anymore, like I destroyed a big part of me to get here, and now I need to pick these pieces back. And then we go back to that descent. So basically, I feel like the meeting with the mentor for women is not in the beginning of the journey, it's actually in that descent, because that's where we meet the grandmother, the goddess, the priestess, or whatever woman figure that's going to tell you the harsh truths, yes, but also help you mend the pieces that you lost, help you come back to your intuition, which is basically what I'm doing right now. And it's not like one, I'm done and now I'm going back. No, you need to do this until you feel actually replenished where you can overflow.
Mm.
And then it goes to the need to reconnect with the feminine, and the plans shift. It's not about doing anymore. It might be about planting a garden, it might be about uh, taking time to just be dancing, or I don't know, looking at the stars, whatever is those things that feel like you're not actually, you might look crazy because you're not doing, but actually you are uh, nourishing your soul, your spirit. And then comes the, after that comes to the healing of the separation between mother and daughter, because this is where the separation of the feminine all starts, is all the judgments that we have towards our mothers. And yeah, this is a big healing that needs to happen here.
Mm.
And then healing the masculine, the wounded masculine as well, that's the next thing. And then integrating both feminine and masculine within ourselves.
Wow. Oh my God. I gotta read this book. So that's all from the Maureen Murdoch.
Yes,
Okay.
and actually, I got both books. She has the
Okay.
Heron's Journey, and there's also the Heron's Journey. The, I don't know if it's called Journal of Activities or something like that. Basically,
Okay.
it's the practical tools that she uses in her workshops. Yeah, that's yeah, it's a jewel on itself.
Amazing. Oh my God. There's so many insights in that for me. And especially about the man, I feel like the framing of the daughter rejecting the mother is a really helpful way for me to see our societal rejection of the feminine, because there's this like point we reach in adolescence, and it's like, I don't value my mom because what does she do? And I'm not speaking about me personally. I think this is a collective thing, but I'm sure, I'm sure it was part of my teenage rebellion. um,
She even says in the book that she's talking to the daughters of the fathers, but she knows that it is a collective thing. Even if you have a beautiful relationship with your mom,
yeah.
the society has that rejection of the feminine.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know for sure I did. Like I rejected, and then it came back, and now I've told my mom so many times, like, you were right about everything. But this feeling of, I want to go out in the world and do something and be significant, and like, mom, you're just at home and you're not significant, right? Like you're doing all these mundane things, and I want to go out and I want to make a name for myself. I want to go out and do, and there's also like the Electra complex. This I reject the mother. It's the counterpart to the Oedipus complex, right? It's like I reject my mother, I idolize my father, and wanting that acceptance from the doer and the person who's out in the warrior out in the world. So when it's framed that way, I'm like, oh, that makes so much sense. We reject and see as not having value this ability to, I mean, like the energy of the feminine has to be so damn strong because it holds the whole family, it holds the whole community. Um, so it's like you having that hearth fire burning that keeps the whole house warm. We're like, yeah, but what did you do? What success did you create? And you're like, I built this womb that fucking nurtures you and like grows you into a human being, right? And it's the literal internal womb, and it's also the external wombs that we, like that we build in our homes or in our work. The spaces that we create and the opportunities for people to like come and be nurtured and to fully relax because they're held in that space. So like that's such a helpful way to see it. So, okay, so you were talking about now moving into the descent and the kind of like, oh, I don't want to go there. But it framed in this way, it feels like, oh, like I'm going to go run and cry to my mom. She's going to hold me. Like it has this draw, right? And especially coming after the illusion of success and the like, oh, I'm trying to be somebody else in order to operate in this world and do external things and be known. Like I want the people to sing songs about me and I want to be the hero. But it creates that emptiness and then we just crave that dark retreat.
Yeah. And it's so beautiful that you said like, I want to go run for my mom, because I feel like I can see even in close friends and family that there's always that rush of like separating from the mom, separating from the mom, separating from the mom, when that's just going to create more repetition of that cycle. That's not what it's all about.
Yeah.
And it's not that you can't leave your mom, but you need to integrate her.
Yeah. So what happens in that integration? Because there's also the healing of the masculine. It's not the rejection of the masculine. It's not the rejection of I'm going to go out and try to do things in the world. But it's needing to hold these energies in a different way. And that makes sense, right? Because it's like if when there's a full rejection of the feminine earlier on, the running to the masculine is not a healthy attachment. It's like a codependent thing, right? It's like, I need you to see me and value me. So what does it look like and feel like when we integrate, like when we heal the relationship with both feminine and masculine, then we integrate? I mean, like on a practical level, what does planning and setting goals look like from a place of having healed and integrated the masculine and the feminine?
I feel like part of it, that's a very juicy question. I feel like part of it is exactly that process of planning that I mentioned in the beginning, that it's what I like to do, but I was feeling like I couldn't. Because you see, like, it's not practical. It's not like I have a plan. Now I'm going to go and do it. It doesn't go from Capricorn to Aries. You have like Aquarius in the middle to like just ponder and see if there's new insights that maybe it's completely out of the box, and maybe we shift some ideas and we change plans, and there's
and
still
to dream things like way bigger than seem possible or practical. To be like, I know, we should.
We should try to go to the moon. Like, oh, what? Oh,
Yeah.
wow, maybe
Yeah.
that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Whatever. And then even after making these shifts in plans and new visions that you might have and so on top of that more earthly plan, that more airy, dream big plan, then it's not like, oh, now let's do it. No, let's just take a moment to contemplate and go to the waters and just dance with the feminine before we actually go out. It's completely out of what we usually think on planning. With planning, usually we think like, oh, we have a plan, now let's execute the plan. That's not the process. That's like, we have a plan. Maybe there's something even bigger that we haven't thought. So let's just give it space. Let's throw all the possibilities in it. Then like, oh, now there's like what we really want. So now let's just rest because there's something big coming. So let's take a moment to contemplate, to connect, to actually receive the guidance, to have that. And it's not just pretty, like the waters also count like all the fears that might come, all the big cries that we might have, thinking like, oh, but that's too much, I can't do this, and all the things that can steer our waters, as we would say. But then after we go through all of this, we come into the plan with faith. And that's why in Aries season we get to do it with that childlike wonder, because it's that child faith that everything is going to be fine.
Well, after going through or at least like encountering your deepest fears, then things feel a lot different. One time we went ocean kayaking with friends, and I was terrified. I was really, really scared, but one of our friends was even more scared than I was. And so I got focused on comforting her and like kind of keeping things light. And I forgot about my own fear a little bit. And then we tipped over and everything was in slow motion. And I felt the seaweed pulling me down. And I was like, oh, I'm living my nightmare. Like, this is one of my biggest nightmares is I'm in the ocean and it's pulling me down and I can't see underwater. I was like, oh, wow, this is really happening. And our friends were there and they helped us turn the kayak over and we got back in and it was fine. And we got back to shore. And I felt so liberated.
Yeah.
Because I had lived one of my nightmares. And I survived. So, going deep in the waters of Pisces and you're like, oh, what about like all the fears and I'm not cut out for this or whatever it is. There's a huge liberation that follows the fears and follows. And that, the Pisces I often think of as relaxed, carefree. Like a lot of the Pisces humans I know are just like, whatever, we're getting, like they're just living, they're living in a different plane and having fun. But there's also a darkness. Like I've lost a number of Pisces friends because they just were like, I don't need to be tethered to reality anymore.
Yeah.
I'm just going to push this as far as I can. And they pushed it past what the human body could take. And so that's an interesting reframe for me on the Pisces season of like, it's kind of going into the underworld and into the darkness and into the womb waters to find stillness, but also, the fear. And then you can come back.
Pisces is both the faith and the fear. It's really that subconscious that has a lot of light, but there's also a lot of monsters in there.
Yeah. What's in the deep, but the courage. So that's an interesting kind of side by side of the hero's journey versus the heroine's, right? Like the hero is facing this outward enemy and vanquishing him, and it's pretty much always like a male monster, right? You're like facing it. And the heroine's journey is she's facing what's the scariest thing at my core.
Yeah. The hero's journey is facing an enemy that is projected outwards, and the enemy for the heroine's journey, it's actually her inner shadows. It's within.
Yeah. So she's owning her shit. I like that.
And the beautiful and yet hard thing with that is that, and maybe that's one of the reasons why it's easier usually for women to integrate the shadows than for men, is that the woman has no real option to project outwards and blame. That creates more separation and makes it harder. You can't face something outside. That's what ends up happening when with people that just like project and blame and become the victim. You're just separating even further.
Yeah.
But the woman needs to actually integrate that shadow and know that it's her as well. So it's not a path of now I'm enlightened and I'm good, and it's actually knowing to be both
Yeah.
and to live in that space where that those darkest thoughts and those darkest fears and all, even the things that we consider negative, need to be loved and integrated and accepted and seen.
And that it's going to continue happening, right? You're going to continue cycling between being Persephone and Demeter. Like you're gonna go back into that underworld. You're gonna be the the daughter, the maiden, then the mother, then the crone, and like on repeat.
Yeah.
So I mean that's actually a really helpful framing for me as well. The hero's journey is sometimes represented as a circle, but it's not a complete circle. It has endpoints, and the heroine's journey is a completed circle where the ending brings you back to, like it starts over.
Yeah.
And we talked about the spiral, and it could be in 3 dimensions, right? And it makes sense to me that like I would just keep encountering the same themes throughout my life, because there's something about my incarnation that was like, hey, this is going to be your practice. This is going to be your theme. This is going to be what you will attend to. I mean, maybe who knows how the system works, but maybe each of us is like given one thing to work on to heal it for all of consciousness, like you just take this one little thing and you do it like, okay, and then you bring it back, and it's like, oh, now that's healed for the collective
For
human
generations.
spirit.
No.
But integral to our journey is knowing it's all going to restart. So we're not trying to get to the summit and now we're okay. Our job, from what you're saying, is to continually be open and ready to be brought low again, to have to visit that underworld again, to integrate again, to be pushed to the point of like dysfunctional masculine success energy, where we're like, okay, I can't do this anymore.
And I don't know, it might get to a point where we get to just be integrated. I doubt it's going to be like that, but I feel like being aware of the cycle and knowing where we are in each moment without feeling like I need to move to the next step. I need to move to the next step. And without resisting like I was going into the next step, because it's like at this point, like I would rather go back. But that doesn't work either. Um I feel like it's more like accepting where we are, being present where we are, and then we can move as fast as we can, and maybe we can stay a little bit longer in that integrated part until it's time to move again.
I think this is where planning could actually be really key, because before we started recording, you mentioned like man, when it was like 2020 and I needed to go into the underworld, there was more space for it, right? Because things were slowed down in life. And now it's like, oh man, how do I find this space? So, what if at least some of our planning and our goal setting as women is around how will I create pockets of time and space for myself for those trips, those descents inward? And I may not know exactly when they're coming up, but if I can, just kind of create some windows, then maybe I can shift other things around. I've created some pockets of space. Excuse me. And that's a different approach to planning. Instead of thinking, what are the things I'm going to get done externally in the world? It's how am I going to set up my calendar so that there's room for me to feel, be, disconnect, integrate.
And for women, part of it might be just making time in that I forget the names in English, but that period right before our period. And
the luteal phase. Yeah,
that phase. Like, what are the things that need to shift during this time, so that I don't feel like I'm depleted, so that I can nourish myself, and that I can use my period time, which is the time that comes so many insights, like the portal is open, right? So that I can use that time to have the insights that are going to push me forward in the next cycle. This is one thing for everyone. And that's more thinking of like the feminine being ruled by the moon and the masculine being ruled by the sun. How can I slow down during the winter? So that I have more space as well to descend, which is the time of the descent. It is the time where Persephone is in the Hades space, and Demeter kills everything on Earth. Right? Where can we create this time, these pockets of time during winter, and to make our descent as well? And it might be that we feel that the descent is not happening there. Like, it's summer here in Brazil and I'm in the descent.
I feel like both winter and summer are lulls. I feel like they're like the time after the December solstice, whether it's your winter or your summer solstice, I feel like that's a lull. Like when it gets to be high summer, I'm just like, I don't want to start anything. I don't want to, have new initiatives versus the spring energy and the fall energy, which for me are both so charged with energy. It's like there's this transition happening and it's excitement, whether it's spring coming or fall coming. I'm like, oh my gosh, the world feels like it just came alive again.
I agree completely.
So it's I think it's for everybody, it's like, let the lulls be lulls. And, we may experience our own cycles differently too. I have two distinct segments of my luteal period. And one, like the first half of it or the first part of it, I feel very energized and I feel that wild woman energy. And I'm like, oh, and then the later half of it, I'm like, everybody needs to just get out of my way. I don't want to be responsible to anything. I don't want to have commitments in the world. That's when my wild woman is like, is it too late to go run away to the forest and live in a witch's cottage?
Yes. I experience it the same way. It's like the end of the luteal phase and the beginning of the period. Those are the like, leave me alone.
Yeah. But for me, it shifts because then when I go into my inner winter, I usually feel a softness, and especially if it's very intense and I'm in a lot of pain, and it like forces me, and I love it, to just detach because I just don't have the energy. And I'm like, I cooked breakfast. I feel like that was a marathon. It's like,
I should. I kind
of move into a softness there, right? Because it's just like, oh, wow, your body, you're working so hard. Thank you so much. Versus a day before where I'm like, I am
Yeah.
not available for anybody.
That's a great point. I have the same shift. It's just that that first phase is like what you said. I'm not available. I want my space. I
Yeah.
need to uh, just discharge. It's not even recharge. I need to discharge everything that's happening, and that more peaceful, sensitive, soft phase that comes after. I still want to be alone because I feel like now it's the time to connect with myself in the way that I like to connect with myself. It's not just I need to shift this because it's just too much.
Yeah. So what's your big insight from all of this? What's your insight on planning and goal setting?
Mm. I feel like the biggest insight is just being very attentive to what part of our phase we are so that we can be present with it and not resist uh, the point where we are, because the thing that the thing that keeps us from moving the most is not knowing where we're going or what's going to happen, which is the thing that was keeping me stuck, is thinking we need to and not being fully present with the phase. Because if we can just be present with the phase that we are, even if we don't know, we can move quicker. And if that doesn't work, we just move again. We move again
Yeah.
instead of being holding on to something. Just like what you said with the that detachment that comes in the inner winter. It's just uh, I'm gonna be held no matter what, like your card
Yeah.
says.
Yeah. And it's a kind of acceptance, right? It's like being fully present and, as you said, attentive to whatever stage and cycle we're in is the acceptance that allows the process. So I'm imagining, there's some natural process that needs to happen. There are floodwaters, and I'm like keeping a door closed or trying to build a dam. And so it's like you're doing is lengthening this part of things, right? The water needs to get through. You just open the doors, accept, let the water through, then you come back and dry things later. But
Yeah.
it's like I'm trying to have the control, so I'm just prolonging. My big insight is what you said around thank you so much for taking us through that heroine's journey, around the daughter rejecting the mother, being linked to this idea of external success in the world, and the insight action that moves me towards is I really want to pay attention to what kind of energy my planning is coming from. And I really don't want to plan things unless I first have a desire. I
Mm.
don't want to skip the desire phase. And it's actually a very cool place to be right now, because right now I'm working on projects that aren't my projects. Like I'm doing them, like as contract work for other people. And so I'm learning these skills where I realize I've had a lot of skill gaps. I have a lot of skill gaps in documenting procedures.
Mm.
So what it means is I figure it out, and then the next time I do it, I'm like, I forgot how to do this. I got to figure it out again. And, like that doesn't work when you're on a team with other people. So I'm learning a lot of skills that I had some gaps in. Like I had some major gaps, and that feels good. And I'm like, this is very cool. I'm practicing some of these external masculine skills of managing a lot of different projects at once and prioritizing and what are the tasks and who do I need to coordinate and that kind of stuff. Using Asana, it's like I'm making all that stuff happen, and I get to do that in a training ground that's I don't have to get hung up on like, but what do I want to do, right? Because these projects are not like my brainchild. I'm working on them as part of an organization. So I'm getting the practice doing. And then on the like my side of things, I'm like, I'm really going to just listen for the desire. And I only want to take action on the things that have that desire behind them when it comes to what I'm putting in the world for this year. So it's a cool place to be.
I ran away from procedures and like documenting stuff like crazy. And then when I get back to it in a way that makes sense to my brain, I'm like, yeah, maybe I can follow something like that.
Well, if I think about how I would do this for somebody else, then it really, really helps me, because then it just calls upon my compassion. And I say,
Yeah.
I would never give somebody else this task and say like, just do it. And you like this whole mess and jumble. Right. And I do, like, part of my work is I do create SOPs for other people to follow.
Yeah.
And that allows my heart to come into it, where I'm like, oh, what would be the way that I could document this that somebody else would feel really supported by instead of frazzled by? So that helps. But yeah, my insight takeaway action is, I really want to plan from desire. I really want to plan and set goals from what do I want, not what do I think I need to do.
And I pulled the desire map just the other day, exactly thinking of that. Like, I need to review my desires.
Yeah. Beautiful. I just feel them. I mean, like, it just actually, and that, I mean, I think the integration space also makes space for that. You know, we may come into it crying, we may come into it like in the descent to the darkness and the like all the shadow coming up, but then in that space of feeling it, that all of our emotions can be seen and heard and felt, including the ones where we're like, oh, I'm really excited and lit up by that. I'd like to do that.
And talking about integrating feminine and masculine, one beautiful thing that happened with the whole story of this heroine journey book, I don't remember if I mentioned or not, is that the suggestion of this book came from a male friend.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. So the heroine's journey and then the heroine's journey notebook, you said, or journal, and they're both by Maureen Murdoch, if anybody wants to grab them.
Yeah, the heroine journey, it's the other one is I think it's probably Journal of Activities, the name of the other one.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. Well, we'd love to hear what your thoughts are on planning and goal setting. And, you know, it is mid-January when we're recording this. Like, where are you with your plans and goals? And do you feel called to give yourself some more space after listening to this conversation?
Yeah. And I think we can plant a seed that it might be that there will be more on planning and a planner coming soon. So just stay tuned.
Yeah. Ways to get in tune with your cycles and have that feel more intuitive.
Yeah. So next time, take care.
Take care.